Welcome back to the Allegheny Northern in N-scale, and today we are going to do some switching of the town of Aurora. Now, the town of Aurora has one industry that is switched regularly, and that is Graphics Inc. It's a printing and reproduction company. They receive bulk materials, papers, cardboard, that sort of stuff, as well as bulk ink that comes in boxcars and tanker cars, respectively. Before we can begin switching operations in Aurora, we need the material to switch, which means we need cars. So right now what we're seeing here is a through freight that is dropping off for us a string of tanker cars and box cars, but it is not going to wait around for us to complete our work. In fact, it is going to make this drop as quickly as possible because, as you can see, there is a train right now waiting to leave, and that is a coal train. So as we clear the main line, the coal train does take off. The Allegheny Northern is a right-hand running railroad, so when trains need to get on the opposite side, we'll call it the wrong side of the tracks, to make switching maneuvers, it does bottleneck traffic. So in this case, we've held up our coal train from getting to the power plant just long enough to make things complicated here on the line. The other thing is, while that train is waiting to depart, it's also backed up into the Amtrak station. So that's going to be a problem. Today's locomotive crew, myself as the engineer, and our conductor is Brandon. So now that the coal train is out of the way, it's time to get our switching started. So let's go, Brandon. So Brandon has a flag right now, and he is watching over a grade crossing for us because we are about to do a reversing maneuver. And the yard was nice enough to put our cars at the end of the train. Unfortunately, a last-minute special ad by a very wealthy individual has put an extra car on the back of our train that is in our way. So before we can do anything, we need to get that extra car off of the train and out of the way so that we can retrieve our box cars and our tank cars. So as we pull into reverse here, there is Brandon flagging the intersection for us. There are no signals here. In fact, this entire line is operating in the dark. So all of the maneuvers are done by radio, and they are outside of the purview of dispatch. So the only time we will be talking to the dispatcher is when we need to enter the main line for any kind of maneuver that would be impacting the mainline traffic. So as we pull onto the back of our train here, it is important to note that our freight train is also occupying the main line at the front end because the train was long enough that it not only went through the entire spur, but the locomotives are sitting on the main line. So doing these switching maneuvers are critical because what we've done now is we have forced all traffic into the left-hand track. So all trains are now running on the left side of the track regardless of which way they're heading. So sort of makes things a little bit more complicated. You will notice that we are using a shoving platform on the back of our train. Then that is because it is a requirement. Because we are running in the dark, we do have our conductor who will be on the back of the train or the front of the train, depending on which our maneuver is going to be here. And he's going to protect our train and jump off at appropriate points. This line crosses not only the grade crossing that we're operating back and forth over now, but it actually crosses over itself because the engine terminal, which you can see in the back here, it's a small shop. They do not only locomotive housing, but they also do minor repairs and touch-ups to locomotives and freight cars. So that crosses over the spur line, and what ends up happening is we get out and we flag that. All those locomotives are operating at very slow speeds, and it's not something that to this point has been signaled. As traffic increases on the line, we do expect that sooner or later engineering will require us to signal this route. So we've made a good couple here onto the back of our train, and now we are going to separate our cars from the rest of the train, allowing the freight to continue on its way to points outside of the town of Aurora. Before we can continue too much further, we do need to get our special car back on to the train so that it can continue on its way. We don't want to leave the cargo here in Aurora, so we will be reattaching to the flat car, pulling it back onto the onto our local, and then attaching it to the back of the train. Now, the one thing that's going to happen is because when we do that, our number of cars is going to exceed the amount of cars between the switch point and the main line. We are going to have to request that dispatch give us access to the main line once again. So once they clear us, we can continue in reverse and get onto the main line. So dispatch has cleared us and the switch is aligned. We can now pull out of Aurora and onto the number 1 main. All the while, Brandon is protecting our grade crossing. It's kind of a slow intersection because other than maintenance of way, it's not really accessed by anybody because it is the end of the line for that road. So we're going to go ahead now and shove this flat car onto the tail end of the freight train, and we're going to get him out of Aurora. Now, the important thing is here that other than the end of the train that we're going to attach the flat car to, we don't really have any other purpose for this track. This is a simple bypass track. It's not even a runaround because in order to do a runaround operation, you would have to pull out onto the main line. So it is just simply a spur that allows the train to drop cars off. So, all right, now that Brandon's on the front of our locomotive, we're going to head down the line. Once again, let's go Brandon. He is very fond of that flag, as you can tell. He never puts that thing down, so he's going to ride with that flag down all the way. Thankfully, he's sitting on the other side of the platform, so that flag is not in my way as I'm operating our locomotive. But we are going to grab our cars that are sitting here off to the side, and we're going to go ahead and push them down the line. And what we want to do is we want to grab the cars that are in the industry. So there's already 3 box cars and 2 tanker cars that we're going to need to grab a hold of and pull out of the graphics building. Now, the box cars sit inside a covered dock because obviously if you're unloading a box car and the weather is not ideal, we don't want the paper products that may be coming off of those cars to get damaged. So here's a quick look at our setup as far as where our cars are, and we're going to go ahead and grab on to the box cars. You'll see once again the loading dock folks have not shut the box car doors, so before this train makes it back out onto the main line, we will secure those doors. And Brandon here is standing watching our train. He's going to work the switch points for us as we grab both the box cars and the tank cars before heading back down the spur to grab the loaded cars. So in the real world, a print company probably wouldn't receive this volume of ink. I mean, that is a tanker car is a lot of ink of one color. But to represent some additional traffic on the line, here it makes sense to, I guess we're going to pretend that they do that much printing in the modern day and age that they need at least 2 tank cars. So once we have a good couple here and Brandon gets the airlines connected, we'll go ahead and do a test, and then we will take off down the line. And we need Brandon to get on the train. He'll ride the back of the car all the way down. So now that we are in motion here, let's go Brandon. Time to hit the line and head back to our loaded cars, which are patiently waiting on the spur. I call it a secondary. It's not really a secondary, but it can be used to bypass the main line if there is a train waiting in the station. So if Amtrak is occupying the station, we can continue to run right hand by breaking off and running through the town of Aurora. And as long as the local is not working, then that's basically a free track. So it does require that we will operate a little bit slower because you are passing through essentially a yard, an engine facility, maintenance away area, and the track just is not as in good condition. But it is not uncommon to see through freight trains operating through on this branch. So once again, Brandon will jump off and he will protect our grade crossing as we pull out once again onto the main line, because the number of cars that we have is just not enough distance between the points and the main line. So we have permission from Central to go ahead and do that. So we're gonna pull out onto the main line as we need to, and they understand that we're operating in a back and forth motion here. So we actually have a time window in which we can maneuver, and if we go outside of our time range, then we'll have to ask for additional permissions. The maintenance away train that's occupying that line now is not always there. They are doing some work further up the line, and that's where they're tying over. So sometimes there can be drop-offs on that track. Typically, they are repair in place. That's a rip track. So if there are any kind of items that can be simply applied to the train cars that don't require a full shop, it is not uncommon to see slightly damaged cars in that area that are getting serviced. So now that we are pulling our train back out onto the main line, we are going to clear our switch point, and then we're going to shove the loaded cars back into Graphics Inc. And depending on how many cars, so right now this train is at the limit of what it can handle because we are going upgrade here. So if we have a larger locomotive, it's not a big deal. It has the horsepower we need to get those loaded and empty cars up the grade. But you will sometimes see, if the maneuver is a larger maneuver, you will see either additional locomotives, or you will see a larger locomotive performing the switching duties. All right, so Brandon is once again on the front of our train, still holding that damn flag in his hand, and we are heading down. We'll drop off the tank cars first. The railroad has a standard, as most railroads do, that if you open a switch, you have to return it back. Our guys here get a little lazy sometimes, and they do not return the switch to the correct place. So instead of it being on the straightaway, it was on the turn for the tanker cars. So we'll go ahead and just drop those off first, and then we'll pull back, realign the switch, and then shove our box cars into the correct location here at the dock. Once we are satisfied that the box cars have lined up correctly at the dock doors, we will pull away from the industry and take our empties back down the spur for pickup. Now, in a typical operating session where we are operating all of the industries on the line, the switching, although it's done here in Aurora, we are not complete with this train because we need to get these empties back off the branch and into a transfer yard. So as we come down the line here, and you'll notice once again Brandon is on the shoving platform, still holding his flag. We're going to come down the line here and pull our cars clear of not only the industry but also the cross track to the engine terminal, and also the grade crossing. And so now, if we were operating a complete session here, there's two ways that this industry gets finalized. One is either this local has additional duties on the next town over, or what will happen sometimes is there will actually be a separate local run that will come and pick up these cars and take them to the interchange yard. The interchange yard is simply a location where Norfolk Southern exchanges cars with CSX or the Wheeling and Lake Erie, and that is represented in a couple of different ways. Either they go to another point on the upper deck of the layout, or they are taken completely off into staging to be recycled on the next run. So I know this was a short little video here, but this is going to be the first in a series of operational videos. And obviously we also have the intermodal yard here to switch. So look for upcoming videos as we complete switching out Aurora and get more involved in operations. So I hope everybody enjoyed the very brief video of a very simple switching maneuver.